again. I know you're scared. No one told you that.
Hey, smile.
Be this. Feeling afraid.
Why can't I go outside?
So
You have to get this done first.
I know it's not fair, but what is when push starts shove?
Is there school tomorrow?
Yes. You're gonna be fine, all right?
With nothing, just know we'll always be
Simon, come on, you're gonna be late.
Don't give up when the road gets rough, 'cause we're flesh and blood. I'm here for you.
Jerry called me stupid today.
He called you stupid? You're not stupid.
And Mrs. Olshoff made me stay in for recess.
Just grab my hand.
Why can't I read?
I'm gonna talk to your dad and we're gonna figure this out, okay?
Okay.
He's a smart kid. We have to do something. He can't read.
Start shoving, you're left with nothing. Just know we'll always be.
Hey, you're going to Lawrence now. It's gonna be different.
Okay.
After all that we've been through, I will walk with
A, echo, F. E, echo, F. E, echo, F.
oh, when push starts shoving, you're left with nothing. Just know we'll always be.
Oh, I'm gonna.
Start
You up, up.
shoving,
Did I know how to wait? Did I tell it on the
with
Larry?
nothing. Just know we'll always be.
Can I go and play?
Go.
Family.
There is no I in Team at Night House Education Center. This is only possible because of the dedicated, passionate, knowledgeable leaders like Andrea, Jen LaHaye, Rebecca Tolson, Sam McCollum. Would you all stand? You too, Andrea. When I tell you I love these people to my core and they are family to me, we are work family. And as I like to say, spirit is thicker than blood. We have the same spirit and calling for this work. And so with our souls, we pour ourselves into the community wherever we can make the difference. I love the theme for this conference, in the room where it happens. You know the little ditty, I want to be in the room where it happens. The room where it happens. The room where it happens. But is that enough? When being in the room where it happens isn't enough. My hope is that when you walk away today and you're in the room, you find your voice in that room, and that you are not silenced by the opposition, that you are strategic and realize this is chess, not checkers. It's waiting for that opportunity to open. In the meantime, being excellent in what you do, letting your light shine wherever you are, because you never know when that window of opportunity will open, and it's your moment in the room where it happens to speak the truth without going concerned for those you serve. Your moment will come. Will you be ready when you're in the room when it happens? So I want you to know a little bit about our work, because this is the backdrop as far as our calling and how we want to leave no stone unturned when it comes to doing the right work. You see, as one of my favorite superintendents says, we can work really hard at things, but are we doing the right work? That's the question. Are we willing to be vulnerable when we recognize we're not doing the right work, and own it and say, on my watch, this will change? You see, I led curriculum instruction and assessment for the 7th largest district in the country. And I didn't know what I didn't know. But when you know better, you can what? Do better. And so you're my do-over. You're my do-over. And I don't mind admitting we did some good things, but then we did things like giving parents stacks of sight words for kids to memorize, which did not reinforce helping children understand the structure of the language. So if I had a do-over, I would do that a whole lot different now. At Nye House, we have a family support office, so that parent, like we saw in the video, that just breaks me down to my core. They're bumping their head against the wall. Your child's just developmentally delayed, all the reasons that are given. They come to Nye House, and we do everything we can to help them advocate and be that ally for their student. Secondly, we have adult literacy students from 18 to as old as 80, learning to read for the first time. And I go and I visit, I do what I call my walkabouts in those classrooms. I tell them, you're my heroes, because you had that secret you carried so heavily. And you were brave enough to say, I am going to master the language. I'm going to learn to read. We don't turn anybody away. You'd be shocked how many are English language learners. They're not dyslexic, but they want to learn to read. So we take them all in, and we can now provide those services, and made the commitment to doing the diagnostic work for them, and then free services for adults who have never learned to read. If you want to have an emotional moment, come to Nye House and have that experience of talking to our adult literacy students and hear their stories. And what is sure and certain in my soul as I have those visits with them is, what if we could have prevented reading failure for these adults who walked around for decades carrying that secret that I'm dyslexic and I cannot read? Which leads to the last part of what we focus on, and that is empowering educators. Knowledgeable teachers are the core of what the science of teaching reading is about, so that they are diagnostic and prescriptive in their practice. And leaders cannot lead what they don't understand, so we must have leaders of literacy lined shoulder to shoulder with those teachers who are VIPs, very important professionals. For those of you, when people ask you what you do, you say, oh, I'm just a teacher. Don't you ever say that again. This country's future rests on your shoulders. No one becomes a great anything without having great teachers whose shoulders they stand on. And that's what I want to talk with you about next. And I want you to think about this. If you have a piece of paper, if you like writing, you like typing like me, I want you to think about this question. Whose shoulders do you stand on? Who has shaped you into the parent who cares about this work, the educator who cares about this work that you are today? It may be a parent, it could be a coach, it could be anybody. You know, unfortunately, some people, it's the pain that you suffered in the system that failed you or your child. That is your why. But I want you to think about whose shoulders you stand on. And I want you to, right now, jot down, or if you like drawing, pictures, whatever way you want to express this, those faces, those names, those moments that shaped you. And then I want you to share with a shoulder partner whose shoulders you stand on. I'm going to tell you why that's so important in just a moment. Are you ready? Whose shoulders do you stand on? I'm going to give you a countdown from 10 to 1 when I'm ready to bring you back together. Let's begin. How do you feel after you talk about the shoulders you stand on? Energized, good, right? It's so important to stay anchored in that place because that's where your core values were forged. And I'm telling you, friends, this work is so sacred. You better expect opposition. It's just the nature of the beast. Expect opposition. And go back to that sacred core of who you are and the shoulders you stand on and determine that on your watch, this will change. This is a moral imperative. We're talking about literacy as a human right. And if you notice, I don't have any defining features on these individuals because it's not about the student group a child is from or the shoulders you stand on are from. It's about that commitment to the calling of being a change agent for every child and adult, regardless of zip code. We rise together. There's no sinking. That's not an option. We will rise together. Remember when you were a kid and you could play tag until the street lights went out, those old time folk like me? Remember that? Remember how there was that place that was the safe place, you put your hand and nobody could tag you? That's what you just did. Nobody can tag you when you keep your hand on that place. And you're ready when you're in the room where it happens. Part of my why and the shoulders I stand on are my ancestors and white allies who believed in the 1830s that it was immoral to deny black people the right to read. People put their livelihoods at stake. They literally risked their lives. That's how powerful literacy is. And I'm saying literacy because it is the science of reading, but it doesn't stop with foundational skills. That's just the beginning. We want children to build a word, build a sentence, and build a life. And so thinking of literacy as that escalator, you have to start here, but you don't stop. You keep going up and up and up. This is an all hands on deck moment so that at every turn, children are empowered to be literate for a lifetime. I'm talking cross-content literacy. Math people out there, right? Science people out there. If your children cannot speak like a mathematician, read like a mathematician and present their ideas like a mathematician, you're not finished. You are also a reading teacher. Is that fair to say? Right? Because access and opportunity, if I don't understand the vocabulary of mathematics, I don't have access. If I don't understand the vocabulary of science, I don't have access. So you can have STEAM, STEM, and every other sexy initiative superintendents. But if they can't read, you have an equity issue. Right? So, and then there was COVID. This is all about taking our power back, no matter what crosses our path. And I remember in my quiet time where I connect to my lifeline, God, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. This is how I do the work with faith. And I said, Lord, what are we going to do? We can't deliver services virtually. We can't deliver services face to face. What are we going to do? And I had this visual in my brain that showed up. It was go into a COVID chrysalis. It's time to reinvent yourselves. And so I went to the amazing NIHouse team and I said, hey, we're going into a COVID chrysalis. Did you know that? And so how are we going to do this work? How do we go forward? We're not going back. We're going to exploit the pandemic and learn from this and learn to do it virtually. And they said, yes, we will. And they stepped right up. And as Andrea shared, in a million years, we wouldn't have expected that Sam McCollum would be negotiating with folks from Hong Kong so we could have our first cohort of folks in training from Hong Kong and other places. There's no ceiling on what we can do together. You see, our nation should be the lighthouse for literacy, for the world. For the world. And I'm going to show you something that makes that so clear as far as the moral imperative in just a moment. Can we agree we live in a knowledge economy and an information age? The pandemic really underscored that because the people who were the least vulnerable could work virtually. Any of you do that? I know I'm doing it still, right? When we think about a knowledge economy and information age, it connects to health. I had a medical emergency some months ago. I ended up in the ER, and I had all this stuff to read and respond to. I had an app, digital literacy, opportunity and access, and I just sat there and I thought, I'm glad this happened to me because I'm picturing somebody who's functionally illiterate trying to navigate, advocating for their health. It touches every aspect of our lives. So in this knowledge economy and information age, our country is experiencing dramatic demographic shifts, right? That's the reality. So when we have the demographic shifts, we need to look at this in two ways. I call adult literacy the canary in the mine. How have we done by the adults in our society? I have the privilege of serving on the advisory board for the only mayor's office for adult literacy in the country. Every mayor should have a council for adult literacy. And the goal is to work smarter together because we have all these providers working in silos and now we are pulling together around this issue because 1 in 3 adults in Houston, where I'm from now, are struggling with literacy or are functionally illiterate. 1 in 3. That's too many folks. And some of them, the system just completely failed. The Barbara Bush Foundation, who's a part of the initiative, consigned Gallup for this bit of research. Isn't this data stunning? If all adults in our country were able to move up to the equivalent of a 6th grade reading level, I'm not even talking about 12th grade, y'all 6th. The national benefit economically is estimated to be $2.2 trillion annually. Do your business leaders in your business community know that? Well, they do now because I know you're going to tell them. Some people aren't motivated by the moral imperative, right? It's just the reality. They're not motivated by that. But by golly, they're motivated by money. So you know what? Whatever it takes to get the message across. Let's speak their language. I know right now there's a huge concern about workforce readiness in our country and specifically in Houston. And the people with the big dollars who need to invest in transformational change are saying, what the heck are we going to do? We've got all these jobs we can't fill. And the central reason why is literacy, reading, writing, and sharing ideas in structured literacy, right? That's the big problem. We've got the solution. Who can you get in front of? Chamber of Commerce? Sound the alarm. We have a literacy crisis, friends. Share Emily Hanford's APM reports. How many of you are into those and have gotten it? Great tool. And the latest one, Sold a Story. Ooh. It's on and popping now. It's on. There are different ways to influence from the middle. I said this last night, I'm going to say it again. Leadership is not about position in title. It's about disposition when you're in the room where it happens. Leadership is about influence. Who can you influence today? Who can you influence tomorrow? You never know when there's this divine intersection of time, this serendipity that happens, and suddenly you step into that space and you are ready with a message of hope. Shame and blame don't inspire people, right? Let's use our words as the containers of power they are to inspire, to help paint a vision about nation building. This work is about nation building. It's about our democracy. When people are functionally illiterate, they take any little soundbite and run with it. When they don't think critically, and think how much your thinking has been shaped critically by what you've read, by somebody who's no longer on earth. That's how important this is. Dr. Stephen Kleinberg's book, The Prophetic City, Houston on the Cusp of a Changing America, is a brilliant demographic analysis of our city. And he says, Houston is a picture of the future of our nation. This quote was really compelling for me. By 2050, all of America will look like Houston does today, very diverse. It is a safe statement to make that if Houston's Latino and Black young people are unprepared to succeed in the global knowledge economy of the 21st century, it is difficult, if not impossible, to envision a prosperous vision for Houston. That's sobering. That's real talk. Our children are going to inhabit that future. What future do we want them to have? What we do today and what we sow, we will reap. If we sow wisely, we will reap well. You are the sowers of the future. And so let's take a little retrospective look. There's a reason we have practically a flat line where our NAEP data is concerned, and this is also representative of private schools. I can't tell you how many private school parents have said, my school won't serve my dyslexic student. Sound familiar? Good gracious alive, are you serious? They won't make time for the kid to receive services. That is so short-sighted. And then there are districts that say we don't have enough money, right? I remember begging for money to serve our dyslexic students when I was assistant superintendent in HISD, and that's what I was told, we don't have enough money. But that was because there was a mindset about, I heard this said so brilliantly yesterday, we accept the bell curve as normal. Think about that for a minute. As educators, we've been sold a story to accept the bell curve as normal when we know 95% of kids can learn to read. And I love what Kareem said yesterday. He said, I'm shooting for 100%, and if I fail, so I fail. But I'm going after every single kid. Amen, brother. Yes. This is unacceptable. Let's look at the critical mass of students below proficient. Among all students in our nation, 64%? Seriously? When we have the treatment, so to speak? That's crazy. Children with disabilities, 89% below proficient? Being warehoused at times in special education classrooms? unacceptable. Children who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, yes, poverty is a factor, but poverty is not destiny. If it were, I wouldn't be here. White students, 55%. Black students, 83%. Hispanic, 77%. I was listening to Dr. Tim Odegaard present, and if you don't follow him on Twitter, follow him. He's freakishly brilliant. I just love him. And he said something that blew my mind. He said, children who are black and Hispanic look like they have a disability. It's not dyslexia, it's dystechia. Ohio, here we go. Let's look at what's happening in terms of score difference by student group. We rise or we fall together. Look at what's happening. When we look at score difference between student groups, that's the opportunity gap we want to close so that regardless of zip code, as I said last night, I don't care if the student is white, black, tan, polka dot, I don't care. Yes. You're mine. You are precious. You are an image bearer of God. You have special talents and abilities nobody else can give to this world. You deserve a shot at doing that. And so we close the opportunity gap for every child, regardless of zip code or disability. It's stunning data. And the sad part is they get to middle school, and what I learned as a assistant superintendent is that they give up in middle school often. And when you look at the cumulative funding loss for the leaders who think they can't afford to address dyslexia, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that march out of the door. Look at your data. Look at the cumulative funding loss starting with middle school through high school. You will be stunned by how much money in title is floating out of your door. There's enough money. And it's just the right thing to do. What happened during COVID? Hot off the press. No shock and awe here, right? What are we going to do for that bubble of kids that went through 2 years of shock and trauma and learning loss? I saw people tweeting, we don't need to talk about learning loss. Oh, yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
If it's your child you want to talk about learning loss, I'm not going to treat my child better than I'm going to. We treat everybody's children. They all matter. And so this is real. Now, we can sit and admire the problem, or we can get after it and do something about it. And that's what we're going to do. Old quip from long ago. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's what this work is about. It's not just about intervention, it's about prevention. And I'm going to tell you quickly, I remember a defining moment when I crossed the Pettus Bridge and I was going to work with the board in Selma City, Alabama. And about 80% of their kids were functioning below grade level in reading. 80%. And I thought, this is really about fighting for reading as a human right. How is it possible that this is okay and that we are just willing to let children languish on the vine? And just before that, that's when I got to come to NIHouse, and it's been 7 years of joyful work, sometimes frustrating. Frustrating when you meet with, this is a district I will not name in Ohio. Sam will remember this, and Rebecca will remember this. We had the superintendent and the cabinet in the room where it happens. And we were talking to them about the science of teaching and leading reading. And the superintendent was just like, not engaged. And Sam was giving me the sign like, let's just go. I'm like, no, I can't go yet. I can't go. So I got up and I said, let's look at the 3 variables you can control and let's map those things. I'm going to tell you those in a minute. So I whip this whiteboard out and I start writing down the things they're telling me, and then they start kind of going, oh my gosh, Oh, we're using like 5 different curriculum. Oh yeah, we're using about 10 assessments, and we're not sure why we're still using that one, right? Did they change? No. But the seeds were planted for those who come behind them in that room where it happened to do the right thing. We have a very low yield, high expense model in too many districts in this country right now versus a high yield, low cost model. And when we focus on prevention, now we're not finished. Remember what I said, right? Some people want to say, the science of reading is just about decoding. It's just about phonics. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I want my friend Elsa Cardenas-Hagen to say what she said last night. It was hilarious. Stay tuned, I'm sure she'll say it. Universal screening. High quality tier 1 instruction. Prevention, not just what? Intervention. Progress monitoring. What are we doing with that formative assessment data to inform instruction? A multi-tiered system of support, because it's not just about high quality instruction. There are other barriers to learning, right? Some of you have kids that walk into school with a backpack full of pain. And you can't solve all the social ills of the world. So it's about organizing your village so that you have external partners who can address some of the other barriers to learning so you are free to do your thing in that classroom diagnostically. Fewer negative consequences are the result, not just in terms of academic attainment, but the social emotional dynamic of that child's soul. The first job, Dr. Nadine Gabb said in one of our sessions with her, is to learn how to read. Like that kid in that video. If they fail at their first job, they get the message that they're a failure. No, the system failed them. Less early reading failure and more cost effective. What's the result if we wait to fail? You know, we toss educators in a sea of illiteracy without the tools to know how to help teach children to swim. Then we want to administer CPR after they drown. Is that logical? Something's wrong with that picture, right? So the way to fail, we wait to assess and evaluate, we wait, and then we put them in special ed. Then we want to get intensive intervention that keeps them out of the things that give them joy, and more negative consequences, delayed reading success, less cost effective. Duh. Let's change, right? Let's change. How many of you follow the Reading League's work? I love me some Maria Murray. That is my sister from another, well, from the same mister. Anyway, and combining forces with her and other amazing thought leaders nationally to craft the defining guide, put that tool in your arsenal, because it really synthesizes, and it's a work in progress still, but it's a great start to helping explain clearly what is the science of reading. And one of the things I want to emphasize in this definition, that it's based upon a preponderance of evidence, and it's not just studies from our country, right? It's international research. Dyslexia and reading failure is not just consigned to our country. Everybody's dealing with the same issue. So you'll find so many resources associated with this work that I highly encourage you to use. And some people feel like this is a competition. There's more than enough work to be done. This is all hands on deck. So find your allies, your literacy allies, and combine forces with them to get this done. Now, I need everybody to stand for a moment, because I'm going to give you a little exercise to do with this. Plus, you're going to get the brain going to the blood running to your brain. It's all down on the tushy right now. Okay, up we go. Let's take a look at this. 10 to 15% of our children are going to find reading very challenging and need intensive intervention, right? According to Jan Hasbrook, 45 to 50 require explicit instruction in the structure of language, 35% mostly easy with some broad instruction, and 5% it's effortless. Why is this an equity issue? That's my question. I want you to look around the room and lock eyes with somebody that you haven't talked to today. Make eye contact. Yes, I'm asking you to make eye contact. Put your finger up in the air, and you're going to go 1, 2, 3, you're it. When I say 1, 2, 3, ready? And then you're going to answer why this is an equity question. Ready? 1, pointer in the air. 1, 2, 3, point to somebody. You're it. Go ask them why is this an equity issue. And answer the question. This is what I need you to do. I need you to think about what you heard from your shoulder partner that was really compelling. The reason I want you to do that is one of the most powerful things in your arsenal, tools, is being a great listener. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps his mouth shut. Being a great listener. Understanding to that person, listening and being able to repeat to that person's satisfaction that you heard them, even if you don't agree with them. One of the greatest gifts we give others is listening. And there's a lot of talking in our society now, but not enough listening. And sometimes, even if they're wrong, if you can answer to their satisfaction, I get you. You're going to get a lot further with those people than you are by doing a whole lot of talking. So, who did you listen to? What did they say that resonated with you about why this is an equity issue? Who wants to tell me what you heard? Ah, yes. All right. Here we go.
She said that as educators, most of us fell into the it came effortless or mostly easy. So we probably already start out with a bias that it just should be easy.
Powerful. Powerful. Check our bias at the door about our own lived experience. Anybody else? What'd you hear?
So Denise had mentioned what I liked, what she responded in her response was that more is, it's not about being fair. More is important. There are students that do need more support, more help, more time, and we have to somehow look at our classrooms and find a way to allow students to understand that more and that extra, it's not about being fair, it's about all of us as a team getting to where we need to be.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm walking over here. I want you to all to think about this. Think about NAEP and think about performance at advanced levels. In a knowledge economy, is proficient going to cut it? Or do we need to be moving children who could do more to higher levels, right? We have accepted mediocrity for children who are capable of so much more because of the soft classism and racism of low expectations. Just because I'm in a suburban district and I'm all cozy doesn't mean you're doing a great job. It may be that your parents are doing a great job and you're benefiting from zip code. Sorry, I said it.
We kind of discussed which falls in the 10 to 15%, the very challenging and needs intensive intervention. Because a lot of times what happens is we assume because the child is in that district or in that suburb, but all children learn different. So for me as a mom, it's learning styles. What's the teacher's learning style? Because the student's ability to be able to learn from their teaching style means a difference. So they're teaching one way, but how is the student accepting it?
So there is a science and an art to teaching, but there is no improvement without the science first, and then the art follows. I love Dr. Elsa Cardis-Hagen's comment. She said, she talked about how, and I remember this as a district leader, we buy all this stuff, all this cute stuff, right? It's all shiny and cute and it's in the closet in plastic wrap a year later. And she said, just give me a chalkboard. I'll teach them to read. So The teacher needs the right tools, just like a surgeon in an operating room needs the right tools. When I flew here and the pilot got on the intercom, he didn't say, "Welcome to Southwest Airlines. I have just read the manual. I assure you, I think I can get this thing to take off, and I'm pretty sure I can get it to land. Buckle up and have a great day." You know what I would have been doing, right? And you to run for the exit. Are we doing that to our children?
That bottom 10 to 15%, that those kids are having babies, and then it becomes the systemic thing, and they struggle, the parents struggle, because they are traumatized, and what do? We blame them. So.
Should have sent us better kids. Oh, you're a struggling reader, right? The systemic, this is about systems change. I am not an expert like a Elsa Cardenas-Hagen or a Rebecca Tolson, but golly, I know systems work. And so we need to create righteous cycles. And by the way, that starts upstream. I am really determined. I'm in my 60s. I don't know how much time I have left here. But the upstream issue of universities in ivory towers not willing to do the right work must be addressed. And I celebrate Walsh University for having the first Masters of Reading program in the state of Ohio. We are proud partners at House Education Center, and we are looking for our village universities who want to reinvent how we apprentice teachers and leaders to do the right work. It's not just about teachers. I remember when I was in HISD, and there were teachers who knew how to teach reading. They'd say, "Can you get my principal to let me do what I need to do for my kids?" Because they're in the way. They think this is baby stuff. They didn't understand they were teaching them foundational skills. So this is comprehensive work. And it is comprehensive when we do not ignore our children with dyslexia. Look at California's analysis on this. Neglecting dyslexic learning has a huge financial cost to society. Dyslexia will cost the state of California $12 billion this year. Think about what California could do with $12 billion. What if Ohio did this analysis? And we're not just talking about the toll here. We're talking about the incalculable cost of people's souls when they have to walk around with that secret and try to act like they're not functionally illiterate. It is estimated that 15 to 20% of people in the world are dyslexic. So this is not just an issue for Ohio or for our country. It's an international issue, an opportunity for change. But here's the moral imperative part for me. When you look at the critical mass of people who are incarcerated, which country has the greatest number of prison inmates? The land of the free, the United States of America. If you think about the sheer population density of China and India, this makes it even more unconscionable to accept on our watch. There is a clear through line from functional illiteracy and the school to prison pipeline. Let's look at it as far as states. I'm from Texas, not proud of that stat at all. We're number one. And by the way, privatized prisons are making a lot of money. It's the new Jim Crow on prison inmates. Think about those who have sold people a bill of goods on the curriculum they're choosing for reading instruction. How much money on the backs of our children they have made, and then somebody else scoops up the remains and makes money on them again in prisons. That's immoral. It's unacceptable. Now, there's the spirit of the law and there's the letter of the law. So Senator Cassidy pulled a bipartisan group together to create the First Step Act on Donald Trump's watch. It did become law. Here's the ironic thing. It includes a provision to screen inmates for dyslexia. The screener, I learned recently, is not valid and reliable. They just made up something. There are all kinds of things that could be used. Seriously? So you can have the letter of the law as far as legislation is concerned, and Ohio's done some great work. We need to attend to the spirit of the law. We cannot leave a stone unturned. Now, we need studies on this, but we can't do the proper study until we have the right screening processes in place. However, this study was done some time ago, 2000, and it found that 48% in prisons in Texas were dyslexic, and 2/3 struggled with reading comprehension. A third of prisoners surveyed at 98 prisons struggled to pick out basic information when reading simple texts. And around 20% of the general population had a language-based learning disability. Speech pathologists, diagnosticians, we need you. You're a part of the solution. We cannot leave you out of the village. This holistic way of looking at the right work and getting it done. Universities who are preparing these individuals need to include dyslexia as a point of focus and apprenticing them. Otherwise, we're screening and we miss it, right? I will never forget this day. I mentioned this yesterday. One of my dear friends, whose name is Betty, about this tall, she's that kind of cushy grandmama you want to just hug. She just gives you the best hug, sparkling blue eyes, black hair, beautiful smile, red lipstick, Southern Belle. Taught inmates for years to read in the maximum security prison that exists in Livingston, Texas, where we also have death row inmates. And I asked her for the privilege of spending the day with her and the 60 men that she worked with, 2 groups of 30. I remember walking to their room, and I saw all kinds of men. Men that had tattoos over their entire face. Men who had the Aryan Nation Brothers signatures. Men who were black. Men who were all kinds of things, Hispanic, right? But number one, common denominator, poverty. And when I listened to their stories, when I learned of those who were diagnosed in prison, it broke my heart. And I told them, I want to hear your stories because I'm going to take your story everywhere I go. These men love Betty so much. As I mentioned yesterday, one of them said, "We love Miss Betty. We would kill for her." Good to know. Glad I'm on Miss Betty's good side. And I'll never forget, when we ended the visit, they had a room laid out with all kinds of food. I mean, like beautiful laid out food. And some of the inmates were helping to serve it. And I said, "Oh, Betty, can they eat? Can they join us?" She said, "They don't allow that here." I lost my appetite. I couldn't eat. And it was symbolic of me, of people not having a place at the table. If you don't have a place at the table, you may end up on the menu. This was me as a district leader. You've heard the phrase blind leading the blind? Oh, I bought into balanced literacy. I thought I knew what I was doing. We did some good things, but not nearly enough. It is absolutely imperative that we not just have teachers who know how to deliver instruction, but we need leaders of literacy. And I want to acknowledge an amazing team in this room. And the reason they're so amazing, an amazing philanthropist flew the superintendent and leadership team to Houston and then flew the teachers from this particular school, Helen Arnold Elementary, to Houston, where we had a lighthouse campus. Now, under the radar, we're working in HISD with some campuses doing great work, highly decentralized, but we're under the radar. Majority EL campus, 100% free and reduced lunch. Most children loved in the language of Spanish from home. Helen Arnold, majority African American, AAE dialect, common denominator, high poverty. I remember one teacher in particular, a kindergarten teacher, who said, my kids are learning, why do we need to do this? And she was kind of a resistor, you know, she was like, I don't know about this. We went to that school, we walked those classrooms, we talked to those teachers, they came back, she was like, LaMonica, Principal Davis, we've got to do this, and this is what we need to do, blah, 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 blah. She was on fire. So part of your strategy is to give people an experience so they have a mental model of what the right work looks like. That's how you can get some buy-in at times when your words aren't enough. You can't take an experience from somebody. They went back. Dr. Rebecca Tolson was all over it. We have amazing coaches. I think, Andrea, you did some work there too. Jen LaHaye did some work there too, right, Jen? What happened, Doc? What happened, Doc? I'm speaking prophetically over you. Okay.
We had 100% buy-in from our teachers. We went from an F on the state report card to an A on the state report card. This year, we're maintaining, we have 5 stars as they have changed from grades now to stars. 5 stars on the state report card. Our kids are learning. As of today, we have no suspensions in our building this year because kids are coming to school to learn.
I think that deserves a standing ovation. No I in team. But it takes a great leader to lead literacy, to be vulnerable and to say, on my watch, this will change. Does this look familiar to any of you teachers out there? This is what initiative overload looks like. This is what happens when we don't make it clear what people can stop doing before we tell them what they need to start doing. But it's not just telling them, it's doing the work with them. This is what I looked like, deer in the headlight, before all this gray hair, many moons ago. Teaching English, yes, recovering English teacher, yes, I am. And theater arts teacher. And some of these kiddos I know now, dyslexic, showed up for theater and said, Miss, this is the only reason I come to school, right? I didn't know how to reach kids who were at a kindergarten level in one classroom and all the way up to a college level. My reading preparation in the science of teaching reading, never heard the word dyslexia once. Book, lovely man who just said, turn to page 1, turn to page 2, turn to page 3. Here's the theory. No application. Not equipped for the work. And so I did the best I knew how based on how I learned to read, which was easily, remember back to what we talked about earlier, but I didn't know how to do the right work. Because this was what was going on in my university. The most dangerous phrase in the language is, we've always done it this way. It's got to change. You are a lighthouse. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're kind of ignoring email, being fully present, centering in this work, how to take the next step, you are a lighthouse effect. And remember, lighthouses have 2 purposes. One is to warn people of danger. Don't go this way. This is not going to serve students well, serve educators well. And 2, lighthouses are to beckon you to safe haven. You have 2 purposes. We can't leave either of those undone, right? We need to remember these essential elements. 1, effective leaders who know how to support and do the right work. LaMonica was in the mix with her teachers doing professional development and the practicums. How can I support what I don't understand? You know, when I worked in HISD, this tickles me now, highly decentralized, we had these high poverty, high performing schools. And I would go and visit them, and they never told me that they were working with NIHOuse. Little did I know I would come full circle and end up with, had no clue in my own backyard. Kind of ironic. Collaborative teachers, but it's about doing the right work in POC, so it's not just a label, it's a way. And this is baked into the culture of your school. Involve families who know how to support the right work from home. Not 3Qing, hello, right? Having parents reinforce the practices of struggling readers? Really? Stop doing, right? Stop doing. Supportive environment. Again, there are barriers to learning that go beyond solid classroom instruction. And then ambitious instruction. And I want to add a word, application of knowledge, but evidence-based knowledge. Not just any old knowledge. The science of reading is incomplete without the science of teaching reading. You know, I have a refrigerator that could use some cleaning. All right, I'm sorry if I got in your business right then. Okay, some of y'all need to do it too. I have poor eyesight. I have contact lenses in. The first thing I bought for myself when I got my first job, contact lenses and ballet lessons. And my daughter has excellent 20/20 vision. So when we clean the refrigerator, I take her along for the ride. And she's like, Mom, oh my gosh, Mom, it's great. It's a cure for cancer in here. Oh my gosh, Mom. I'm like, you can scrape off the top and, Mama, no. I'm just messing with her. I wouldn't do that. But do we do that to kids and give them expired stuff? Do we do that to teachers and give them expired stuff? We just adopted this thing. We spent millions of dollars. It's killing your kids. Stop it, right? Admit it. Be vulnerable. Say we made a mistake and do better next time. But don't give kids expired stuff. This is the hard part. But once you do it, if you want to get over initiative overload, it goes a long way. Anybody have a closet at home that looks like this? Okay. All right. I see a few hands. This is what it feels like in a teacher's brain or a leader's brain when we have people working in silos. Everybody's saying our stuff is super important. Special ed, you got to do this. Curriculum instruction, you got to do that. Leadership, you got to do this, right? First, we need to strategically abandon what's not working, because when we do, then there's space for the new, right? Then we're setting ourselves up for success. And this needs to be done in an unsiloed manner, because our silo mentality may be getting out of hand in some schools, right? This is about doing the work together. I have such respect for the Ohio Department of Ed, and I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Rebecca Tolson, who is an amazing change agent. I met Rebecca at an International Dyslexia Association conference. I just happened to walk into her room, and it was an accident. It was divine. I walked in, I sat down, I listened to her sister. I was like, OMG, I got to meet this woman. I made sure I was last in line. And then I walked up to her and I sashayed over. I said, hi, I want to tell you about NIHOuse. And the rest is history. And then her shoulder partner, Sam McCollum, put those two together. It was like, okay, magic has been made. When we gather the key stakeholders in central office, we have representation from the principalship, from teachers, and we do the work and plan the work and work the plan in an unsiloed way. This is how you set yourself up for sustainability. This is how you get buy-in. And then you work the plan. I talked about cumulative funding loss. The three things we can control, those variables: funding. Sometimes you can braid funding to get the right things to happen. Sometimes we're putting funding into things that are a bottomless pit and are doing a bit of good. So let's redirect our funding. Time. Think about how much time we've wasted for children who sat in classrooms receiving ineffective instruction, how many educators in their career trying to deliver instruction without the right knowledge. Knowledgeable teachers change things. Universities who had folks sitting for 4 or 5 years. That's time. We don't get it back, right? And talent. Investing in people power. That's the big difference maker. That's what happened at Helen Arnold Elementary. It's not a fluke. We're talking EL learners in one case and students who are loved in the dialect of AAE, and it's the same. It's agnostic. If you go look at our table, you'll see something that represents Appalachia. It doesn't matter the language or dialect. The science is the science. But here's the magic that I love the most in terms of sustainability. I want you to independently, again, stand. Get up, get up, get up. I want you to look at this together, and then I'm going to talk about it, but I want you to do your own analysis first and tell me, where should we be investing in initiatives if we're serious about real change? Are you ready? Find somebody else's eyes that you haven't talked to yet. Lock eyes. Find those eyeballs. Okay. Pointers in the air. 1, 2, 3. You're it. Go to find your friend. How many of you sat in professional development trainings that look like the theory piece alone? You ever hear about the twins? I have twin boys. They're 23. And so I think about this experiment where these researchers brought twins into a room, and one had a pile of toys, one had a pile of manure and a big shovel. And the twins ran into the room, and one twin ran straight for the toys, and he was having a delightful time. The other twin ran to the pile of manure, and he's just shoveling away, shoveling away, shoveling. They're like, oh my gosh, what's up with this twin? Let's pull him aside. So they pulled the little kid over. They said, son, all these beautiful toys over here, your brother's playing, why aren't you playing over with the toys? Because, mister, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere. I was that kid in professional development. I was going to find the pony. Front row of the pew, first pew, right? I wanted to learn. But you know what? I wasn't served well by just theory. Right? Even plus demonstration. And we build our professional development along this line and this research. Plaque practice is great, right? But it's not until you add coaching that you're building it to last. Our nonprofit is about sustainability. We're not about enabling. Yes. And when districts have really embraced that idea of building that backbone to hold the literacy initiative up, and they invest in coaching, you see things change quickly. Because not only are the teachers getting the support they deserve to perfect and refine their practice, the principal can walk that building and calibrate for the right work and what it looks like all over the building. The coach can join those POCs and have conversations about formative data and what it's saying and how to make mid-course adjustments. I would not get in my car, put my hands behind my head and my foot on the gas. But that's sometimes what we do when it comes to formative assessment. Or we are assessment rich and analysis poor. What's the point if we're not using it to inform instruction, right? So, this is another district that oh my gosh, Harlingen, CISD in the Valley, that district along with Brownsville that started the right work 22 years ago when Elsa Cardenas-Hagen said, hey, on my watch, this is going to change in the poorest region of the country. And the work continues after what, 10 superintendents, Elsa? Oh, Elsa's no joke. She's no joke. Honored to be a shoulder partner. But in Harlingen CISD, this was one of the most vulnerable, amazing leaders I have ever encountered. He is my favorite superintendent nationally. And this man retired a year ago, and the work continues. That tells you a lot. And he's the one who talks about design teams, that unsiloed group of people who plan the work and work the plan. These are famous Arturo Cavazos quotes. And by the way, he picked okra growing up, and his mom produced 3 superintendents and 1 teacher. Oh, wow. Think about that. It is not just about doing hard work. It is about what? Doing the right work. Plan the work, work the plan. Stay true to the work of early literacy. That's not the end of the story, but stay true to it. I want to tell you a quick story about that quote. When you see the data in a moment, you'll see the needle move dramatically there. The second year of the initiative, after they had seen dramatic improvement, 2 campuses decreased after we invested in early literacy training for teachers and coaches. Can anybody guess what might have happened? Think about why you think that might have decreased. Okay, you thinking about that? On those campuses, the principals took the highly trained pre-K teachers and put them where? In the tested grade. Is that strategic? Not at all. They didn't get it. This was about prevention, not just intervention. And Art was on it, and his team, they were like, not on our watch. No, no, no. You're not moving another teacher without clearing it and your strategic why. And if you don't have one, they're not going anywhere. There's some things you just don't leave to chance. Well, you know, they're the building principal. If they're not making good decisions for kids, they lost that autonomy. I wouldn't give my keys to a 2-year-old and have them drive a car. You got to earn that right. So, remove barriers, kick it off. Don't wait for perfection, and implement with fidelity with coaching. This is the result. So we started our journey with a conversation with his new director of early literacy. He had a champion, and she had autonomy to implement with fidelity. You can see how the needle moved from a difference where they were below the state, and if you continue to see how that growth continued into the pandemic, they are outperforming the state by far now. Can you imagine the kids who started that journey now as 3rd, 4th, 5th graders and how they're performing? And they have a partnership with UT in the Valley. He developed a Grow Your Own Teacher program. So these teachers, future teachers, can come right back to Harlingen, go through UT, apprentice to do the work well, and come right back to the system. Brilliant. That's what I call a righteous cycle. That's the vision. As you can see with their Tier 3 data for pre-K through 2nd grade, that upside down triangle was flipped right side up. They're actually beginning to identify the children who have the red flags for being dyslexic. And so they went from that work on first instruction, Tier 1 instruction, getting it reading right the first time. Then it was like, okay, Weeden, come back. We got to talk about special ed. We had another gathering. Then it was dyslexia. No stone unturned. A literacy safety net for every educator and every student. And again, as you look between October 2015 and October 2018, and I'm getting their new data soon, I can't wait to update it, you can see the stair-step effect. They're going up, up, up year after year. And I know I'm running out of time, so you're going to get all this information. Again, the big idea is partnering with people who are going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. People who will challenge your thinking. People who care about your long-term success. Pick your shoulder partners carefully. I also recommend district leaders and teachers, you're also leaders, think about the other barriers to learning. that children encounter. This is the framework I got to use when I was working with Scholastic Achievement Partners in the Tampa Bay area. And they reached out to the community to bring other people to the village, if you will. How many of you remember the story Stone Soup? One of my favorite stories, you too. Love that story. Remember, the villagers were unfriendly at first, but they had a vision. They were going to make this stone soup in the center of the square. And so people started to bring the things that they could add to make this amazing feast for everyone. That's what this is. You're not intended to do this work alone, educators. That's not fair. You deserve support. And so if there is a crisis, do you have partners and nonprofits that you can tap into to help you organize yourself around the work? The center being literacy, leadership, right? How are you engaging the business community? How are you engaging your families? Dr. Karen Mapp out of Harvard, I highly recommend her work, MAPP. She has a summer experience. It will change your lives. And it teaches you how to calibrate for how you're dealing with your families. Are you pulling them in close? Are you pushing them away? Do you have invitational schools, regardless of zip code? That's very important work. So you get the idea here. We've got to organize ourselves so there is no gap in our safety net. And our common enemy, I don't care what you look like, what girl suit you came here in or boy suit you came here in, our common enemy is poverty that sucks the life out of the mind, body, and spirit. If you look at this data from the Brookings Institute, and you note on the y-axis, we're looking at the likelihood of a child being ready for school at age 5. Anybody see the outlier regardless of economic status? If you do, give me a thumbs up if you see the outlier. If you don't, keep looking. Okay? White, black, Hispanic. The burgundy bar represents poverty, the moderate or high income bar. Less than a high school education, bachelor's plus, married, not married, attending preschool. What's the outlier? Education, bachelor's degree for the mom, even if she's high poverty. I would bet you anything she is giving that currency of literacy to her child. So if we know adult literacy is that powerful, can we leave that stone unturned? No. Literacy transforms the family tree. And then we can look at preschool. I don't know how preschools are situated here, but if that's an opportunity gap, let's close it. Are they doing best practices in those preschools? Based on zip code, they're more likely to be doing better practices, but don't count on it. Find out. That's part of the safety net. And then there's a narrative out there that the science of reading isn't culturally responsive. There's a narrative that it doesn't serve ELs well. Hello, we just gave you an example, right? That's not true. Challenge that thinking. I love this woman, Dr. Julie Washington, and she says, we should not allow the prestige of the dialect impact our views of the people who speak them. How can we decide not to respect the scholar because we do not respect the dialect or language? You see, when I go to Detroit, in some situations I want to be, hey girl, what's going on? I'm going to switch code. And then I'll have a different language variety depending on who I'm speaking with. We can't take that from people. That's what gives them a place at the table in their community. We get to have both and, not either or. Something smells like it's burning. Oh, it's the roof. Okay. Acknowledge that. Okay. Woo! Febreze, psst, where are you when we need you? Specifically, in this article she wrote with Dr. Seidenberg, I really like this quote. Reading depends on spoken language. So for those from the EL community, they're right. Spoken language. And we need to talk about the continuum of literacy. Remember I said build a word, build a sentence, build a paragraph, build a life? It doesn't stop with just decoding. It's more than that. Comprehensive literacy. Some children's language skills differ in important ways from the classroom language variety. And teachers rarely receive guidance on how to enhance literacy instruction to meet these children's needs. So this is the next great work for us. What if I have AAE as a dialect, or Southern dialect, or I speak another language? It's not just Spanish, right? We have lots of languages in this country. How do I make sure I'm not overrepresenting you as dyslexic or underrepresenting you as dyslexic? We got to get the other stuff straight, and then we can go on to the greater things together. That's what's ahead. And I want to tell you something that is a barrier, I think, for leaders. This idea of transformational leaders, dun, da, 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 right? Cape on, just flying through the air, doing great things. Look at me. Look at me. I'm doing great things. Superintendent comes to the district. Oh, that's not my initiative. Let's stop it and start something new. Really? Did you check to see if it was working for the children before you strategically abandoned it? That needs to stop. It's foolishness. It's adult foolishness. It's adult egos. That's the number one thing that gets in the way of the right work. And I'm not just talking about the people who don't know the right work. In our own community, if we're not careful, the villagers have their pitchforks out and they're running towards each other. Come on now, come on. We can do better than that. We can have respectful, humble conversations about the work and get better together. I don't have time to entertain foolishness. Do you? Within our village or outside of our village, we represent and show up in a way that informs the environment around us. I'm not going to let anybody else control my thermometer. Will you? So, this is Hattie's work and some other researchers who said, transformational leadership or instructional leadership, what has the greatest effect size? Instructional leadership. I want to highlight some things from that analysis from ASCD. Instructional leaders focus on learning and impact. Instructional leaders evaluate the effect of everyone in the school, even the bus driver. Dr. Cavazos in Harlingen, he had his people in central office, even those from the finance office. They had to go and work with kids on campuses. He did it. It was a crusade. They believe that success and failure in student learning is about what they do. It's not blaming the kids. It's not blaming the parents. It's about what they can control. They see assessment as feedback. How are we doing? Like Dr. Cavazos said, he looked at the feedback. He was like, oh my gosh. On my watch, this is happening after kids spend a year in our district, and we have this many kids who can't read and aren't prepared for kindergarten. That's unacceptable. Use the feedback. They understand the importance of dialogue and listening, what I said earlier, to students and teachers, because often there's a perception gap. Sometimes teachers think they're doing this fabulous job. I have my dinosaur unit, it's awesome, right? Ask the kids. Is your instruction rigorous, relevant, and aligned to science? If it's not, there's a perception gap between teacher and student, and teacher and principal and central office. We need to be curious about that and use that data to drive what we're doing. I love this last one. Well, I missed this one. They set challenging targets and they maximize student outcomes. They don't lowball it. They put it up here. And they welcome errors. They share what they've learned from their own errors. I hope my transparency is a model for you, those of you who can be those change agents. It's okay to admit you didn't know what you didn't know. Just don't get satisfied there, right? So, these are parents from Helen Arnold Elementary. This is the intergenerational opportunity when we're brave and bold enough and willing to do the right work. When we're ready to do the right work, we're really preventing, not just intervening. As one of my thought leaders I so admire, Frederick Douglass, said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. One more quote from the prophetic city. The source of wealth for Houston and our nation in the 21st century will have to do with attracting the best and brightest people in America working on the cutting edge of knowledge. The resource of the knowledge economy is housed between the ears of the best and brightest people who can live anywhere. The pandemic has amplified that. Do we have gold in our own backyard we're not cultivating, mining, refining? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Another man of great courage and small ego who changed a nation. Don't underestimate your power. You are a container of power. Said, may your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. So when you are in the room where it happens, if you have to say your thing with your knees knocking together, remember this acronym. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Do it afraid. And one day you'll be like me and you won't feel an ounce of fear because there's too many people at stake on your watch. You just push on. And yes, people will talk about you, so at least you're doing something to stir up the water. I want to end with this reflection from my quiet time when I feed my spirit and put my oxygen mask on every morning. Prayer, meditation, for me, it's the Word of God. Literacy transformed my family tree because my dad, I'm a PK, he planted the Word of God in our hearts. My mom, who was a struggling reader, who went to like 10 different schools, both of them navigating the war zone of poverty, was determined we would be avid readers. And our lives were all transformed through literacy. So I have to pay that forward. I believe we walk by faith, not with fear. Be those focused adults, intervening tenaciously with hope. Do not quit. Do not stop. Do not allow the opposition to talk you out of this vision. Attention, all energy vampires. It is not about you. It is about our children. Thank you for the privilege and opportunity of your time, your treasure today. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for all children. And NIHouse is here to serve. Amen. We love educators, and we show it not just with word, but with deed. I want to acknowledge the NOBIDA team. You are first class, A+, amazing, all things done properly in order, every T crossed, every I dotted. This has been just an amazing blessing for me. And I want to thank all of you who made this conference possible. Let's go forth, let's conquer, let's be relentless, and let's get it done.